What will happen to your life if you don't practice restraint? Let me start by sharing my personal experience, as I've made many mistakes and believe I have something valuable to share. I won't preach to anyone, you have the right to live as you wish, but it's important to understand the consequences. First and foremost, without practicing restraint, I couldn't feel genuine emotions for a decent girl. Not for anyone, really. Even though I had many acquaintances, I just couldn't connect. Rationally, I understood that this was the kind of girl, the kind of woman, I should choose. It seemed like a great option was being handed to me on a silver platter. But no, something would feel off, something wouldn't sit right. And even if you come up with 1,000 arguments in her favor, the desire for that girl simply wouldn't appear. Of course, my instinct for self-preservation was still there. That's why women who frequented clubs, drank excessively, or cursed in every other sentence weren't even considered. I was looking for a kind of mythical unicorn. She had to be a girl who was both a little daring and modest at the same time. Playful, yet homely. Emotional, but incredibly reliable. I spent about 4 years of my life to realize that such women do not and cannot exist. That's when I drew a conclusion that I stick to even now. There are women who strive for chastity, and there are women who seek indulgence. That's it. There's no middle ground. Why? Because life constantly presents us with choices. Do you go to the party or not? Do you go to a guy's house on the 3rd date or not? Do you post a bikini photo for likes or not? Do you use clothes or bright makeup to attract attention? Even within a single month, countless such questions arise. They demand a clear answer, yes or no. There's simply no in-between. That's why men and women come together, choosing one another, and can only start a relationship when they're headed in the same direction. If a man is pursuing certain dirty fantasies, it's unlikely he'll choose a girl from a church school. She's not what he's looking for, like non-alcoholic beer. If it's not what you want, why buy it at all? This has always fascinated me. There are the obvious wild ones, girls in short skirts, covered in tattoos. But there are also the less obvious ones. It's often because of these less obvious types that people turn to the internet for help. A man comes and says, "My woman is normal, she just doesn't have unnecessary restraints, complexes, or neuroses. She's very open and bold, she just has more energy." Listening to this nonsense, you wonder, how does he not see the obvious? The answer is simple. The man justifies to himself that lust is normal and even consciously seeks it out. He applies the same evaluation system to his woman, even if she's cheated on him. Because if he starts to understand and expose her behavior, he'll have to expose his own, and then change his lifestyle. And that's something he doesn't want to do. So, he keeps living the same way, finding arguments that avoid addressing the real issue. In my youth, I was also very dependent on women's appearances. Their figure, hips, legs, whether they were symmetrical, their manicure, facial features, big eyes, everything mattered immensely. I carefully hid from myself the fact that this was a problem. I explained it like this: well, I just like women like that, I can afford it, so what's wrong with that? I didn't realize that being attracted to morally corrupted women was a natural result of my way of life. I was terrified at the thought that someday I might have to choose an ordinary, boring woman who, in many ways, might be inferior to all my exes. It seemed like something awful, almost like a punishment. And so I told myself, another 3 years will pass, and when I grow up and become more mature, maybe something will change. Maybe I'm just too young? Or, as many say, I simply haven't met the right person yet. So, I kept living that way. But the more time passed, the deeper I sank into the state of lust, and the more dependent I became on it. Eventually, it started to dawn on me that waiting for a miracle was pointless. No good woman would ever interest me, not at 30, not at 35, not even at 40. That's when I began to wonder, what should I do? One day, I decided to model my future. I asked myself, what would happen if I didn't practice restraint? What kind of relationships and women await me ahead? Where would this lead? What am I signing up for? I chose to simply weigh all the pros and cons. The first scenario, betrayal. Without restraint, choosing a good woman is impossible. That option just doesn't exist. Therefore, the likelihood of betrayal increases significantly. It's not guaranteed, but it wouldn't come as a surprise either. The second scenario, boredom. This is also a realistic outcome, and I've experienced it before. At first, the woman is very attractive, but over time, that feeling gradually fades. Especially when you take a stronger position in the relationship, this attraction diminishes even faster. What then? Leave and look for another woman? Only to repeat the same cycle again? That scenario doesn't work for me either. The third scenario, losing interest but staying. This is the least likely scenario in my opinion. If I lose interest but don't leave, perhaps due to restraining factors like children. I envisioned this scenario in detail, and it scared me. I chose the woman because of strong attraction, but now that attraction is gone. And she's completely unfit for family life, neither in terms of character nor skills. This would mean constant problems, arguments, and conflicts. And then I'd regret 1,000 times over not choosing a normal woman. Sure, a normal woman would have her flaws, but she'd also have her strengths. Here, there wouldn't be a single strength. The fourth scenario, the muse. This is a situation often seen among influential and wealthy men. They're often career-driven and dopamine chasers, always seeking motivation. And where do you find that in relationships? Find a muse. She's a woman who's both yours and not yours at the same time. She's with you today, gone tomorrow. She keeps motivating you. But in such relationships, sooner or later, the woman becomes demanding, capricious, and sometimes even starts to disrespect the man. The respect fades completely, and the woman only fills her life with comfort while the man keeps trying. At first, he might think it's exciting, double income, new achievements. But in the end, he loses everything. Absolutely everything. For me, this scenario isn't even an option. I'm only mentioning it as an example. And what do we have? Not a single positive outcome. It simply doesn't exist. The passion was so overwhelming that even knowing all the consequences, I changed nothing. One day, I looked at myself from the outside and realized I was behaving like an addict, always needing more. I craved it intensely, but once I got what I wanted, I couldn't understand why I needed it in the first place or why I did it again. Sinking into lust begins with it seeming interesting and pleasurable. But after a few years, life without lust starts to feel empty. Even the thought of living without masturbation or women becomes uncomfortable. A person starts behaving like someone possessed, all while maintaining the illusion that everything is fine. After all, British scientists have said intimacy is healthy, right? And if you need a more convincing justification, you can visit a urologist. He'll most likely advise releasing tension in the evening. But that's not all. Over time, I realized I didn't even want relationships anymore. Why bother? When you can like one girl's photo today, say hello to another, and go on a date with a third. It seems cool, doesn't it? Where's the motivation to build long-term relationships then? What's the point? We understand that lust heavily stimulates dopamine. And this creates a need for new connections. The alternative is to fall deeply in love with a woman. But as we've already established, such a woman won't be normal. And I don't even know which of these options is worse. Later, I realized another problem. I lose interest in women very quickly. At first, when we meet, everything seems fine. But after 6 months or a year, everything changes. It's no longer as exciting as it was in the beginning. Over time, I understood that the only way to avoid this is to end up in a weak position in the relationship. But that option is completely unacceptable to me. Another dead end, and I still don't know what to do about it. The most painful realization for me was how cold I had become. I didn't feel any genuine, heartfelt emotions toward women, even when they deserved it. And do you know why? Because lust is about wanting to take. I want. I need. Love, on the other hand, is about giving. It's the complete opposite. Everyone knows that promiscuous women don't know how to love. Why? Because lust pushes out love. These are two feelings that are always in competition. When men give women apartments, cars, or iPhones. 99% of the time, it's simply a way to buy pleasure. These same people are unlikely to donate a single dollar to charity or an orphanage, yet they'll easily fund a spoiled girl's vacation to the Maldives. A lustful man is always primitive. He's easy to manipulate, easy to deceive, and easy to make suffer. At some point, I realized I was heading down that very path. With each passing year, I was losing my ability to love, while my desire to want kept growing stronger. That's when I finally understood the difference. Love and lust are completely different things, and they cannot coexist. Some might say, I plan to start a family in 5 years. But what should I do until then? I can't practice restraint for 5 whole years. In reality, having that much time is a gift. It's an opportunity to change yourself, prepare, and eventually choose a good woman with joy and confidence. You'll be able to avoid the challenges I faced once I was already in a relationship. In my case, a year of restraint wasn't enough. There were still many issues to resolve in the relationship. The most important step is making a firm decision to fight this battle. Relapses happen to almost everyone. But there's no point in punishing yourself for them, it doesn't help. If you falter, give yourself a week and aim to go longer the next time. The most crucial realization I've come to is this: the success of restraint doesn't depend on how many days you've lasted but on how many times you're willing to get back up after a fall and continue your journey. That's the true measure of strength and determination.